Over here.
Yeah.
Hej.
Hej.
Sofia Johannes, Sveriges Television,
Ja.
Swedish Television.
Hej.
Vill börja med att säga stort grattis.
Tack så mycket.
Vi är ju såklart jättenyfikna både på hur det känns nu, 3:e gången gillt, men det är också en väldigt stor film, hyllad film den här gången. Men också vad du tror att det här betyder för svensk musikskapande.
Nej, men tack så jättemycket. Jag tror att... är det okej om vi kör på svenska, eller?
Ja, jag tror jag måste bara ta det igen sen på engelska.
Okej. Jag tror att det betyder väldigt mycket för... Jag kommer ihåg när jag växte upp och de filmerna som jag såg som handlade om musik, det var inte så många, men de var väldigt viktiga. Och liksom, jag tror att den här musikfilmen kommer verkligen inspirera många generationer av barn eller ungdomar som vill hålla på med musik eller ta upp en gitarr och spela. Och så jag tror att det kommer bli väldigt viktigt.
Yes, sorry everyone. I was just asking, first congratulating him and then asking what he thinks this would mean for future Swedish music creators.
I said I think it's going to mean a lot for kids that grow up, and I think for a long time this movie is going to be around. And I remember being a kid and watching music movies. There's not a lot of them, you know, it's not a lot of good ones, but you know, a movie of this stature about music and being inspired by this, I think is going to be inspiring for a lot of kids, for a lot of generations.
Next question in the room, number 393. If you can please stand up. And
Hej, grattis.
Ja, tack.
Emily Svensson för Aftonbladet.
Mm.
Tidigare så är det bara Ingrid Bergman som också har fått 3 Oscarspriser, också som svensk. Hur känns det för dig och vad betyder det här ögonblicket för dig?
Det betyder väldigt mycket faktiskt att få ha det här ögonblicket tillsammans med Ryan som jag jobbat med i 16 år. Michael B. Jordan, jag har jobbat med honom i, this is my 5th movie with Michael B. Jordan. And just being a family, vara en familj som växer tillsammans, som gör det här tillsammans, och vi kan alla be celebrated, and you know, I think it means a lot, and you know, being a part of this movie has been, I've never been this much part of a movie ever, because on this movie Serena, who's my partner and executive music producer, we literally moved our family to New Orleans. We were there for the whole shoot of the movie. Pre-production and post-production is the longest I've ever been a part of a project, so I'm very proud of it.
And I was just saying that before Ludwig, it's only been one Swede to get 3 Oscars, and that was Ingrid Bergman. So I was wondering, now that you're in that company, how does that feel, and what does that moment feel for you?
Thank you.
oh, next question from in the room, number 215.
Johan Eriksson, Expressen, på andra hållet, långt bak.
All right. Hey.
Maybe I'll just do it in English because
All right.
it's going to be faster. Yeah. But we already talked about Bergman and what this means to you and to the Swedish filmmaking. I just wonder, how are you going to celebrate this? This is your 3rd Academy Award, and you've had a quite successful award season. So how do you wrap it up?
Well, my dad is here, my mom, my sister, all from Sweden. They came, and you know, it's like this is probably, I would say, my more, like I had said in my speech earlier, it's like one of my most personal films, because you know, my dad was a guitar player. He became a blues fanatic, you know, listening to blues. You know, even though he lived on the other side of the world, he heard the blues music in the 60s, and that changed his life. He wanted to become a bluesman, even though he didn't know, never been to the States, could not relate to what was happening over here, but the music was so powerful, and that changed his whole life. And in you know, my dad is, that happened to a lot of teenagers in Europe in the 50s and 60s, you know, the blues, the power of the blues music. And so, me growing up, when I was about 8 years old, I heard, you know, Metallica. That became my identity. And at that time, I didn't think about, without blues, there wouldn't be any Metallica. You know, without blues, there wouldn't be a lot of, you know, none of the music that we heard tonight wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the blues. And so the score is kind of my personal journey of kind of going back to kind of what my dad was playing me as a kid. How I celebrate? I'm going to celebrate with my family from Sweden, and also with my family from Sinners. You know, I've been working with Ryan for 16 years. Michael B. Jordan, we've done 5 movies together, and you know, we're growing into this, and you know, being around each other for this long amount of time is very special.
Final question from in the room, number 394 in the front.
Helpful. Thank you, Tanya Hart, Hollywood Live. Congratulations. You actually sort of answered my question. I was wondering about your dad and listening to the blues music in the 60s. Where was he hearing this?
He bought the albums in the local record store in Linköping in Sweden. So he bought, you know, Johnny Hooker, and then after that, also, you know, he was also hearing it live because a lot of the blues artists were not allowed to play in America for the white establishments. So what they were doing, they were actually coming to Europe, like, you know, Mick Jagger, John Lennon, Paul McCartney. You know, these guys, they heard the blues musicians, and they inspired them to write music, and so they brought them over to Europe. And when these blues musicians like Howlin' Wolf and Buddy Guy, and they played in Europe, finally after they played in Europe, then in the States they were allowed to come back and play in American, you know, venues. So, yeah. So also a funny story is that my dad, Albert King, was his favorite guitar player. So my dad actually really fought really hard to actually name me Albert after Albert King, but it became, my mom won, and it was Ludwig actually.
Thank you for sharing that history.
Thank you so much, and congratulations.
Right. Thanks, guys.